Hello, so this is the article from Indian Express on the recently announced 8.3% GDP growth rate in third quarter this financial year. Now, this article has decoded these numbers and what is behind them. So, we are going to have a quick glance at these numbers. This is GVA and this is GDP. There's one thing we have to agree upon: the definition of GDP and GVA first. Gross value added and gross domestic product. We're not going into too many technical details, but we'll just see what's the difference. Gross value added is calculated at the factor cost, while GDP is calculated at market price. Or you can also use basic price, but whatever these prices are, these are more than the factor cost. That is, what is the relationship between GVA and GDP? So we first calculate the GDP, and there are these indirect taxes minus subsidies. That means net taxes added to GDP to calculate, added to GVA, to calculate GDP. And the difference between GDP and GVA are the indirect taxes minus subsidies. So we'll come to this again. We look at the numbers over the last few years. This was 2021 to 22, 22 to 23, 23, 24. So now we'll look at the numbers. This is the GDP and this is the GVA row. And we see the difference between GDP and GVA. They have been very close, and in this current running financial year, quarter one both were same, quarter two 0.4% of divergence, and now 1.9% of divergence. That is 190 basis points of divergence between GVA and GDP, which brings out some facts that this bracket here is 1.9% percentage, that is 190 basis points. Now if we see, recently subsidies have been cut, the fertilizer subsidies have been cut down. All this is given in the article. Subsidies have been cut down and taxes have been increased, and this has the effect of inflating the GDP, and this has been inflated right before the elections, so we can clearly see what's happening. The indirect taxes have been increased and subsidies have been lowered to project the GDP growth rate. But yeah, we have to, in this channel at least, follow a principle of neutrality. But more than neutrality, we should follow objectivity. And being objective, this needs to be clearly understood. Alright, so we'll just go through the highlighted things. 190 basis points lower than GDP is the GVA this time. There's a perceptible slowdown in private final consumption expenditure. Alright, those are not the points I want to talk about here. There's a sharp rise in net taxes and fall in subsidies, which has led to this 190 basis points of divergence between GVA and GDP, showing GDP growth rate in a very good light just before the elections. And Axis Bank in its note said that the divergence is a 10-year high and driven by a rise in net taxes. Net taxes rose by 32% year on year in quarter 3. That means quarter 3 of last financial year and this year there has been a rise of 32% in net taxes. Wonder why? GVA would be a better metric to look at while assessing growth. Yeah, alright. There's a sharp fall in subsidies and lower payouts on fertilizer subsidies have caused these. And subsidy was 25% lower than the year ago. Subsidies go 25% lower, net taxes go 32% higher. And the result is 8.3 GDP growth rate. This article cutting is from Indian Express, and I'll also post it on my Telegram channel, and the link of which will be provided below this video in the description.